But first, your electric bill might go up next year. And the reason may have nothing to do with your own usage. The culprit? Artificial intelligence, data centers, and quantum computing. Now you may think, hey, I don't even use any of that. I'm not using AI programs like ChatGPT. I couldn't even tell you what quantum computing is. Well, here to explain is Brett Chase with the Chicago Sun-Times. He reports on environmental protection, pollution, and public health. Brett, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So, will our electric bills really go up next year?
That's what it looks like. About $10.50 on average per month, about the middle of next year.
Ooh. Well, I'm going to go ahead and speak for the average person and say, we don't know or maybe even care what quantum computing is or what data centers are. So why do these things mean my bill has to go up? What's the connection there?
I will say, in fairness to quantum computing, it's still pretty small. And the first project that we're seeing here in Chicago is probably not going to break the grid. Now, when you talk about AI, that is massive amounts of power. And we don't have a fully dedicated center to artificial intelligence in Illinois yet. But if we ever do, we're talking about a lot of power necessary. The thing to keep in mind is, first of all, ComEd is a utility. It doesn't generate its own power. It buys it. So it buys it on the open market, and it's part of a 14-state electrical grid that, there was like what's called an auction held where all the power generators in this area, they have to commit to the next 2 or 3 years, how much power are they going to be able to supply. And there is a huge demand all across, from Chicago all the way to the East Coast. A lot of demand expected for data processing for AI. Just to give some perspective, like in Pennsylvania, Microsoft has a big AI operation. They needed power so badly that they brought 3 Mile Island nuclear plant out of retirement, or that's in the process right now.
Wow.
These things are enormous power hogs.
Yeah, so it's sort of predicting the amount of power that will be used and then kind of spreading that across residents who are paying for their electric bill.
That's right.
So Chicago residents didn't necessarily ask for a quantum computing campus. I can't say that there's been a huge public demand for the rise of AI. So what's driving this? What's the public benefit of these things?
Well, actually, we are already using AI. Honestly, every time I search, I think it's a beta program, but Google is using AI. We're seeing AI in other applications, and it's going to be a bigger part of our lives. And that's just the reality of it. And across the country, the big companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and frankly, the U.S. government, have an interest in winning the race. We're in a race with China. We're in a race to be the world dominant player in artificial intelligence. And that was even reiterated recently by the incoming administration.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned that AI used a lot of power. So put this into perspective for us. How much electricity are we talking about here?
Sure. So let's say a big data center is about 100 megawatts, which is enough to power tens of thousands of homes. So that's a big center. And again, I'll just say that the first quantum project coming to Chicago, they won't give exact numbers, but they say they're going to be on the small side, which is somewhere south of 100 megawatts. So to be determined, but also we should realize that whole campus on the southeast side is going to be additional, businesses. So there's going to be a power suck. And then in addition to that, Governor Pritzker has made this a priority. So there's 80 data centers in the ComEd area. So it's Chicago and just west of here, and 30 in the queue. And again, there's a lot of big data centers being built, across our grid. And then there's this interesting issue. There's a lot of dots to connect in this story. There's this interesting issue that we are bringing renewables on, but a lot of renewables are waiting to get the okay to connect to the same grid. So meanwhile, we are retiring the coal plants, and eventually all the fossil fuels. I think gas is with us for a long time. We're going to probably be seeing a lot more fracking under the Trump administration. And then we have nuclear. We're in a unique situation here in northern Illinois. What's funny about the story, too, is that we have excess power here. Even with all these data centers we have coming online, even with quantum, we're still going to have more power than we need. But, because we're into this grid system, that's what's, driving the economics of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the residents. You talked to Linda Young. She's a 68-year-old Chicago resident who lives in South Shore. And she expressed some concerns about this AI-powered future and how it's going to impact her life. What did she have to tell you?
Yeah, well, first of all, she seems pretty typical of the residents around that area. Is they're not getting the answers that they're seeking, not from the company PsiQuantum, not from the Pritzker administration, not from their local politicians, and you got to keep a couple things in mind here. First of all, it is a big project. It's on a very toxic old steel mill site.
Yeah.
And it's the southeast side, which has, they've been snake bitten many times when they've been promised great economic, developments are on the way. And so she's more than anything else concerned about just local disruption. And then I basically broke it to her that, that this is part of a bigger thing going on in this country, and that it is going to affect our utility prices. I talked to another resident, Leola, who she really has struggled to pay her electric bills. And so, if you think the average, according to ComEd, is about $100 a month. So, that's a 10.5%, increase. That's a lot,
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're speaking with Brett Chase of the Chicago Sun-Times about his reporting on how big tech like data centers, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence could lead to higher electricity bills for you and me coming soon. Well, Brett, you mentioned Governor Pritzker's concern over these higher bills, but at the same time, the governor is betting on data centers for Illinois' economic future and is even competing with other states to lure data centers here. So what does he want to see happen here?
He wants the auction process fixed, and this is where you go down a real rabbit hole to try to understand it, because most people have never heard of PJM, which is the grid operator. So I mentioned this electric grid that goes northern Illinois, 13 other states, and District of Columbia, so Washington, D.C. And he just wants to know why we have all these renewable projects, solar and wind, waiting to get connected to the grid, and we have excess power here in the state of Illinois. And how can this whole process be fixed? How can we get those renewables online faster? That's because the other thing that the governor has done in recent years is he championed this clean energy law. We, unlike a lot of other Midwest states, we actually have these goals to get to a fossil free energy world, at least for our power, by 2050. So it's interesting. He has a very robust economic development agenda with data, big data, and high tech. But he also wants us to go to this this green energy economy, and those two things are really at odds right now.
Yeah.
And but the last two clean energy laws that were passed here in the state also bailed out our aging nuclear plants so that they can keep them continuing to pump out power as we move to cleaner energy sources.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned PJM interconnection, and Pritzker is blaming them for the high electric prices. How has PJM responded so far?
They said, basically, give us a break. We're just trying to make sure that the lights stay on in all these states. And, we are looking at our process, and they are going to file a response, actually like a formal federal government regulatory response next month. So we'll have to see what that says.
So a lot of mix between public policy and regulation. Brett, I mean, could anything bring electric prices down in the medium to long term?
Well, I mean, we've had pretty good stable prices here in Chicago for a few years now. So these sort of market forces will have to um, work themselves out. Now you also have administration coming in, and it's like we believe in more power, and that's going to be more fossil fuel power. It's going to be all types of power. I mean, we're already sort of doing what we need to do to make that transition. I don't see like the coal plants coming back in Chicago, at least the ones that have been retired. And folks up in the environmental justice folks in Waukegan will tell you, that was a horrible thing that they had to live with for a century, right? It's like, and so we've got the nukes here, but how can we control what happens in Maryland, right? So and this is the way of the world. And also, quantum is a lot smaller, but there's also a race, a global race to be the first in quantum too.
Yeah.
And quantum goes well beyond AI in terms of this potential for massive problem solving, maybe finding drug discovery breakthroughs for major diseases. I mean,
So
that would be something, right?
a lot of unknown at this point, so it's just kind of a wait and see then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's reporter Brett Chase with the Chicago Sun-Times. You can read his watchdog reporting on this issue at suntimes.com. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.